Welcome, everyone. I would like to introduce you today to Rebecca Bell. Rebecca is our aha conversation, ask her anything guest today. Rebecca is an attorney and she works in wills, trusts, estate planning, probate and estate administration, small business, and pet trusts and equine work. She does it all.
Yeah. No, I don't do it all, and that's the key.
Oh, that's the key.
I keep my lane narrow so that everything I do really well.
Very well. Rebecca founded her RB Legal LLC, and it's an all-woman firm. Is that true?
An all-women law firm.
All-women law
Coming
firm.
up on our 15th year.
15th year. And one of the coolest things about Rebecca's firm is that they are the winner of the Clio's Reisman Award for Excellence in Client Service. I can't think of any other award that I personally would be more proud of, but one that is client service. So that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
I invited Rebecca to speak to us because of my personal experience with Rebecca. I've known Rebecca for a while, but not as a lawyer. Last year, I personally had an experience with my sister's passing away. She died suddenly in a fire, and I was the one who needed to deal with her issues after she died. We had just begun talking about things, but she had cancer, but obviously it was a very quick death. And she was very reticent to talk about powers of attorney, what her bank accounts were, even where they were. She was very reticent to talk about anything. And then when this happened so quickly, it was very surprising, even though she was, one, single, two, she has a daughter, but her daughter is, I'm her daughter's guardian. So Carrie didn't have any, dependents or anything. She didn't have very much money. She was getting Social Security. So there wasn't much, It's like, why do I need a will? I don't have much. And that was her attitude. But what I found was, holy guacamole, Batman, there were a lot of hoops to jump through. And so when I immediately called my business breakthrough team member from my mastermind, Rebecca, and said, I need some help. And Rebecca walked me through it. And so I wanted to share my experience with everyone. That's why Rebecca is here today. So Rebecca, what we're going to do is, if anybody has any specific questions, pop them in the chat. Rebecca, how do you like to do this? Would you like people to ask questions as we go, or do you want to save them to the end, or what's your...
Ask questions as we go. That's
All
the
right.
easiest.
Perfect.
My preference is to keep it really informal.
Okay.
And just have a conversation.
Let's do that then. So anybody, if you want to pop off and just pretend like we all have coffee cups in our hands, and you're just going to, you can say, hey, Rebecca, I have a question. Feel free to do that.
And if I don't notice it, Kelly will.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, me too, Robin. So I'm going to start out with one of my questions, and this came up when Carrie died, was what is one of the biggest misconceptions about who should have a will and probate and trusts and all of that? Are there any misconceptions that you've heard of?
So let me start with just the basics.
Okay.
You don't have to be rich to have an estate. An estate is simply anything you own when you pass away. Simple as that.
Okay.
It can be 50 pair of shoes and a car, whatever it is. So when you're doing estate planning, or when you're thinking of that, think of it this way. When somebody passes away, there's just a lot of stuff to do, even if every I is dotted and T is crossed. There's just a lot of stuff. There's emotional things and a household or an apartment full of heaven knows what, right? So there's already stress involved and angst and whatever emotions are brought up. So if you do estate planning ahead of time, it helps that process and it helps the survivors who are around you take care of things. So if you're over 18, at a minimum, you should have a power of attorney, which is a financial document, so that if something happens to you, your family can access your finances to take care of things and to pay for things. In Minnesota, the advantage is if you need a legal guardian, the person named on your power of attorney, or excuse me, legal conservator, a person to legally manage your money, the person named on your power of attorney will automatically become that person.
Mm.
So you don't have to go to court to have someone appointed to manage your financial affairs. Same thing is true if you have a healthcare directive. The person named on the healthcare directive is automatically the person who is able to manage you as a person, your legal guardian, should you need that as you age. But if you're over 18, minimum financial power of attorney. Unmarried, forever, I mean, at any age, you really need a healthcare directive, the power of attorney, and some sort of a will or a trust. Sometimes it depends on what you own. Sometimes it depends on how much you want to spend.
Mhm.
Here's hot button issues that I would look at. If you are married with a fairly uncomplicated, there's not a lot of blended families and multiple children from multiple marriages, just, husband, wife, and kids. The first person to die, it's really pretty easy because a lot of things are joint and the survivor manages it. However, if you are an unmarried couple living together, that can be a mess. Because if you have no documents that allow you to take care of your partner, to keep the house or the apartment, we've had situations where one partner dies and their family said, well, you don't own the house, you don't own anything in the house, and unless you can prove it, have a nice day, we'll see you later. Don't let the door hit you as you walk out. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing, there's more and more unmarried couples, whether they're same sex or not. The fact is, you may have been living together for 25 years. It's just going to be a mess.
So, I've heard
no
of
security.
I've heard of things like a common law marriage and that sort of thing. Is that not a thing?
Not a thing in Minnesota.
Okay. And we do have someone from Massachusetts here. And is this something that you really need to check in with the jurisdiction where you're living to see what the laws are in those particular states, like for power of attorney and healthcare directive and all of that?
Everything is state specific, and probably, at least for Minnesota, and I would guess other states, try your attorney general's office. Mm-hmm. Or whatever the equivalent. I know Massachusetts is a commonwealth, but the attorney general in Minnesota is the person mm-hmm. who has sort of a really super consumer friendly website with lots of information and documents and things to think about.
Okay, so far you've said that if you're over 18, which I don't know about the rest of you, but I wasn't thinking about this stuff at age 18, you need to have a power of attorney, which is a financial document. And that's the thing that I didn't have to get access to my sister's bank account so that I could pay for her dang funeral. She had enough money to pay for her funeral, but the people at the bank were jerks about it. And I remember calling Rebecca in the middle. This is my story. I remember calling Rebecca with the thing I needed to get access to Carrie's bank account. I needed to get it notarized. Banks have notaries. And I went to her bank and I said, I need to get this notarized so that I can then get access to her. And they refused to let me notarize it at their bank because they said it was illegal for them to notarize a document that they would then use to prove that I had and I called my friend and attorney Rebecca, and she said that's baloney. So things happen, and we were trying to pay for her funeral, and I was sitting there and I was bawling my eyes out at the bank saying, everyone else has been so nice and you guys are being jerks. And she's like, well, I don't mean to be a jerk, but this is just the law, you know.
Okay. So warning here. Somebody at the bank or wherever attends a seminar, and I don't know who puts it on, but it just always seems like, well, that's what we were told. Yeah. Well, I don't know who told you, or I don't know if you weren't listening to that part and you zoned it out. But, you know, they don't always know everything.
Right.
Now, there are banks that can be very helpful.
Yes, the other banks were great.
And some banks will say, you know what, we'll draft the document for you because they have a form and you can sign it here, we'll notarize it, and boom, you've got access. I mean, great. And they'll do it for free. I'll charge you if you come to me.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
But, you know, if you can get it for free there, that's the way to go.
And so I don't know everyone well here, but I know Sharon has a young son who's, what is he now, 21 or something like that, 20. So we're saying that
24.
Oh my God.
Time flies.
PC should have a power of attorney financial doc, because you never know. Car accidents, skateboard accidents, who knows what's going to happen. And if you are to see if I'm right about this, if you are to do that power of attorney financial document now, the moment that that person is mentally, physically incapacitated, the person on that financial document is able to access any and all things that they need to for that person, correct?
I would say yes, unless you hit one of those bankers.
Yeah.
And
right.
Then you have to fight.
Yeah. I mean, she wouldn't, this woman, I'm in a small town where Carrie lived, and when I called her up immediately, I said, can you tell me what the steps are for me to get access to my sisters who just perished in a fire? I can't talk to you about that. She wouldn't even tell me the steps. I mean, so she was, anyway, but that's the extreme, right?
Right. And, you know, as some banks have different philosophies, some are easier to deal with than others.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the parents that are the drivers for people who are, for their adult children that are single. That's where we get those people coming in. Mm-hmm. Particularly if they're in college and you want to get access to things at the college, you're going to need that information.
I would not have thought of that. And the healthcare directive, that's another big one. Another personal situation, and it doesn't affect me now because we're divorced, but my ex-husband slipped and fell while walking and ended up quadriplegic. And he was, for quite some time, he was unable to make decisions, but I guarantee you he did not have any directives or anything in place. And his sisters and parents, and he was not married at the time, and his kids, they had a hell of a time trying to figure out what to do and how to help him. And you
So
just
here's
never
my
know.
thing. Here's my soapbox, Kelly. With a healthcare directive, it is the person that's filling it out that's making their own decisions. You get to choose within the laws, what kind of care you want, what kind of care you don't want, when your quality of life has changed.
Mhm.
We focus our healthcare directive a lot on, what's an acceptable quality of life. If I'm in a wheelchair, is that acceptable? Yes. If I'm unable to feed myself and eat and I'm on a feeding tube, is that still acceptable? For some people, yes. For others, no.
Mhm.
So by making those decisions, people around you aren't put in a situation where they're carrying a burden of guilt.
Right.
Right. And then particularly if you have more than one child, mom wouldn't want to live like this.
Mm-hmm. She
Yes,
told
she
me it was
would.
okay.
She valued life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you've spent your entire lifetime trying to get your kids to get along and quit hitting each other in the back seat, and they're never going to spend Christmas together again.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is the thing, right? I found myself getting a little frustrated with my sister for having pushed back on me, because she had a serious cancer issue prior to her death, her quick death, on the power of attorney and all of those things. And I found myself grieving and being kind of PO'd. And that's not where I want to be.
No, I will tell you, I had a sister in here who's had a sibling pass away in that same situation. If he was alive, I'd kill him right now.
And you don't want to feel that way.
He was so angry. I'm so angry that he put this on me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the other things? You mentioned some sort of will or trust. So,
Okay.
I know that, I have hired you, I have all my papers now, and maybe that's why I'll come back to the cities, just so I can sit in an office with you guys and sign them. But
Anytime.
yeah, so, so that's all official, but if you are an 18-year-old and you just write something and have it witnessed and notarized, does that work? Not. That's a
Minnesota does not accept holographic or handwritten wills.
Okay. Some states do.
I believe they do, just like some states recognize common law marriage.
Okay.
Here's the other thing. If you have, let's say you have an estate plan already done, and you listed Aunt Marge to be your executor. Well, now Marge is really old and you don't want Marge. So you just cross her out. No.
Ah.
The state of Minnesota has very strict requirements on the signing of a will or the signing of most estate planning documents. So you can't just cross it out and initial it like you might, a contract or something. Because now that messes it up. So if that particular will then is submitted to the court goes, well, what did they want? Because the handwritten changes don't comply with the statutory requirements for legal signing.
So you just need,
need to go to an attorney and get it updated.
Well, and that brings up a question. Jan said, Jan, who I know is single, but has, she's got property and all of those things, and Jan can speak for herself, but she is now in the process of reviewing her documents. And how often, I'm going to get mine done. How often do you review your documents? Is it only when there's a major life change, or is it something that you get into a routine about?
I usually say about every 5 years or major life event.
Okay.
Marriage, divorce, diagnosis, you move, you change jobs, you win the lottery, any of those things.
Okay.
It just, or somebody that you've listed as, a key person, a beneficiary, or someone you want to be in charge of things,
Mm-hmm.
has had a diagnosis or isn't well or moved to Timbuktu.
That makes perfect sense. Barb has a question. Do you want to tell us what your question is, Barb?
I
Okay.
can go ahead for Barbara.
Yeah. So
How to convince a stubborn 78-year-old that this is his responsibility to have his estate in order? Good question.
yeah.
Maybe some war stories, if they'll listen. Find somebody that they respect or will listen to,
Mm-hmm.
and engage that person to help. And it might be like I was in the situation when I wanted to have a child and my husband wasn't ready. I spent a lot of time going, oh, isn't that kid cute over there? Look at how much fun they're having. You just start moving them forward down that funnel. I don't know. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
You can scare them. Everything's going to fall apart and everyone's going to fight. Well, they don't care. So what?
Yeah, he won't be here. He doesn't care.
Right.
But he has 3 properties, actually 4 properties that all have pretty good value to them. No direct, he has no spouse, no children, and 5 living siblings. To me, that just sounds like a total mess. We actually had to try, and remember, Rebecca tried to help us with this. We had to figure out how to get the right to make medical decisions when he had a massive heart attack 4 years ago, because he was on a ventilator for 11 days. But that wasn't enough to get him to do anything different.
Well, let me ask you this, Rebecca. It sounds like the power of attorney would be one of the most important documents, even if it's not a will, to get in place. Is that true?
The power of attorney would allow you to manage financial things, including real estate. But you can only take any action while they're living.
Oh, right. That's right.
So, I guess if he's 11 days on a ventilator, you can go make a lot of changes, but he comes off that ventilator, he could restore things. So let me just say, the state of Minnesota has a plan for those that don't plan. If you have kids, it goes to your kids. If you don't have kids, it goes to your parents. If your parents are gone, it goes to your siblings. So, one argument is, would you rather make your decisions, or would you rather have the state of Minnesota make decisions for you on who gets your stuff? So, Barbara, in this case, 5 siblings?
Wow.
Now you've got 5 siblings. And how much are those 5 siblings going to get along?
They're all pretty opinionated. They get along well. Some of them get along well most of the time, but they are opinionated, and yeah, there's gonna be a couple that no matter what are gonna think somebody's taking advantage of it.
Mhm.
But
And then you
not
have
gonna
a
go-
free for all. You've got
Yeah.
5 kids. Who's going to be in charge?
Mhm.
And, you know, I don't know if he is not entirely happy with the government. You could pull that in if you want to say, basically, your entire estate will be eaten up in a legal battle.
Yeah.
Nobody gets anything. And then nobody likes each other after this. So,
Yeah.
He has a friend that is in hospice at the moment who has not gotten his stuff together. And I'm hoping,
can I go
watching
visit
that
him?
process, I would like you to. I can't believe you haven't met him yet. You've done enough other stuff for us that he's been involved with, but
And this is your brother?
this is my brother-in-law, my husband's
Okay.
oldest brother. We finally got him to do some paperwork on one piece of property that we are connected with him on. But he has a home and a airplane hangar and a big farm out in Maple Plain, and all kinds of stuff that we told him we don't care if you give it to cats. We just want you to decide.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have to appoint a family member to be in charge. That's the other thing. We'll have people come to us and we'll say, well, I'm going to make my oldest child the executor and my second child the next one and my third child. No, if you are hiring somebody for a job, you want to pick the person with the talents and the skills to manage an estate, to manage money, to have the emotional bandwidth to make some difficult health decisions. Right? So it's finding the right person to fill the role. It's not by priority, or it's not all the boys first and all the girls second, or whatever it is. You can pick neighbors, you can pick friends, in-laws. I've had people pick in-laws, not their own kids. You can pick anybody you want that you think will manage it. And here's the thing, you can always change it later if you change your mind. You're not stuck with them forever unless you pass away.
How long does it take to get so let's say you have a simple will, right? You have your homestead property, you've got basic, no $1 million anything sitting anywhere, but your basic stuff. How long does it take to get a will completed?
I'll answer that question, but it brings up another. So for us, our goal is always 6 weeks from start to finish. But typically communication going back and forth, what's the birth date for this beneficiary? Or is this, is Christy Joe their legal name, or is it, something else? So that can go longer if people don't respond right away. And we have plenty of people that put money down and get in the process and sort of go, oh, I'm busy. We'll do it later. So we also have a process that we've had to put in place to try and give those people exceedingly sort of gentle to less gentle nudges.
They're very gentle. I've been nudged.
Yeah. Well, there you go. But here's the other thing. If you pass away, and again, Robin, sorry, Minnesota, but if you pass away owning real estate in the state of Minnesota, you are most likely to end up in probate. You can leave your house to someone in a will, you will end up in probate.
Even if it's in the will?
Even if it's in the will. That's an issue. Now, sometimes you just need to start with the will, right? You just need to start with the basics to get something done. Something is better than nothing. However, the real estate is an issue. So in Minnesota, you can do something called a transfer on death deed,
Mhm.
which is essentially a beneficiary designation for real estate. You can do a joint owner with right of survivorship. And so you see that often with couples. So they own the house together. Really not much happens after the first one passes away. The house goes to the survivor. And so, or you can put it in a trust. And the trust also manages the real estate going forward. A trust sounds like a big deal. It's not, it's just a longer will. A trust gives you more options. For example, if you have children that are in college and you want to put in your will or in your trust, I'm not going to pay for ongoing education unless they maintain a C average. Or if they have a spending issue, or if they have a chemical problem, you can say, that the trustee will administer a random drug test 3 times a year. And as long as they're clean, we'll continue to pay for healthcare or college. So, or they'll say, okay, I've got one kid that wants to go into the military and another one that wants to go into a doctorate program. So how am I going to balance those different interests?
Mhm.
And that's what a trust can do. A trust can manage those things a little easier. A will is like, I would say a will is like a recipe card. You just take all the ingredients and you follow the instructions and you're done. A trust gives you options. If the warning light is on, you can do this and this and this. If the red light is flashing, you have this option and this option. So it's a little more complex, but I will tell you that from our pricing anyway, it's probably cheaper to get a trust than it is to pay for a probate.
Hmm.
You're not going to get, I would say, an average probate, and it doesn't matter how simple it is, $3,000 to $5,000. And that's not because it's so difficult. It's because there are so many hoops and publication requirements and proof and signing and giving notice to different people, because it's a legal process. A trust is a private agreement, not subject to the court.
So in a complicated situation, would the first step be try and get all of the interested parties, or maybe a small number, like in Barbara's situation, in a room with an attorney, just for, like, I call it a discovery document, where you just sit down and you ask all the questions, kind of like what we're doing now with you, and then have them go away and say, okay, now we know, so this is where we should go, and then go for it. What's the best process?
So often we'll have a parent come in with a couple of children.
Mm-hmm.
We've had up to 4 or 5 people at a time talking about. That's an option. In general, people want to make sure their kids aren't burdened, and that their kids have a resource to go to if they're not there to help them. Sometimes people just want to have a private conversation and ask their questions. So you have to meet people where they're at. Some people know that they need to do estate planning and they come in and they cry. Because it's upsetting and it's personal. And you have to meet people where they're at. So that everybody that comes in is treated in the way that best helps them. I used to be embarrassed that I wasn't like one of those TV lawyers. You know, I'm a little more like, I want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and have people leave and be happy, right? If you want to fight, we have people we'll send you to. We want to prevent the fights as much as we can. Because there are times, and we see it often, when people turn, when someone passes away, like a parent, that, you know, Tommy Smothers, mom loved you best. You know, everybody's like 4 years old. And you always cheated me when we played checkers. Or it's like,
Yeah.
and it costs them so much more to fix. You know, nobody wants to spend money on a lawyer.
No, and especially if we can ask these questions now when we're not emotional. And, you know, before my dad got dementia, my mom and I were trying to talk him into doing the pay for the burial and all of that, make all of those funeral decisions up front. When we could sit around and laugh about, oh, you really want to have, you know, play Margaritaville at your funeral, Dad? Seriously? You know, when we can laugh and have fun planning the party, that will celebrate that person's life, rather than what I went through with Carrie, which was, I don't know how she wants her life celebrated. So is that kind of planning for what you do at the end of their lives, is that part of a will? Do you put that in the will as well? Or is that something you do totally separately?
So we have those types of things, forms that we include. They're not legal, but they're intention documents.
I like that, intention documents.
But some people don't like to talk about it. Some people aren't going to think about it. And, you know, my dad just recently passed away, like, you know, and I'm like, do I have to do an obituary? Is there a rule? Because I've had a couple of people call and say, oh, I looked for your dad's obituary and I didn't see one. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm busy taking care of everything else that goes along. And there's no rules.
My mom wrote her own obituary. It was very helpful.
Yeah, my mom did too. My dad, not so much.
She had several versions of it over the years. She had changed, but it was like one thing I didn't have to think about. It was very
I have a
helpful.
feeling my mom will write her own obituary.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure she will.
Here
So
she comes down the stairs, actually.
hi, Mom. So here's the thing. Basic estate documents. You can have a will, pretty basic. It's the recipe card. This goes here, this goes here, this goes here. You split it all up, you pay the bills, you do that, and we're done. A trust, a little more complicated, like an owner's manual, gives you more options. Every trust, so you have a trust or a will, but every trust also has a will that goes with it. And it's just one to catch the extra provisions. So, oh, you know, 5 years from now, you've bought, you know, a pontoon boat and a trailer. Well, the will says anything that I didn't actually put in the trust goes there anyway.
So there's a question, Sharon has a question about the difference of the roles of the executor of a will and the power of attorney. Those can be separate people,
Yes.
right? And I've heard different words for the executor now. There's different,
Executor, personal representative.
okay.
Um,
What are the
So-
differences?
so for an executor, or personal representative, they're the same thing. What you want is somebody that can organize things. Because they've got a big job, right? They've got to clean out the house, your closet, figure out what to do with your car and your lawnmower. Somebody that's got the bandwidth to do that. If they don't, they do have the ability to hire someone to help them. Or if one sibling is named, there's no reason the other siblings can't help. So now for financial power of attorney, you want somebody you trust with your checkbook.
That
When
makes-
we do a power of attorney, there's a statement in the statutory form that says, you know, does this allow them to make gifts to themselves? And we
Mhm.
say no. You can reimburse yourself for something you did on the behalf of the person, but you can't just buy yourself a car or a truck.
Well, and something that you reminded me of too is that as soon as you instate a power of attorney, it is there.
It is effective.
So you had me answer some questions regarding that.
Right. So the person that manages your power of attorney is supposed to act in your best interests, act as a reasonable person, act the way they think that you would best want them to act.
Mhm.
But once that document is signed, it is effective today.
Yeah.
And that's why we always encourage people to keep the originals close to their chest.
Mhm.
And, you know, like, you know, we sign everything in blue ink because it's just harder to photocopy and make
Yeah.
it look like an original.
Well, and the other thing about that is, you know, I'm single, no kids. My parents are elderly, and I typically don't live in the same community as them. And so I went through the process of who do I name? And my only living sibling is way out east. So I went through this process with some of my very good friends, and I ended up naming one of my best friend from high school, my executor, or my power of attorney and executor, actually, along with my mom, because I know my mom couldn't handle, or I didn't want her to have to handle. And I knew that Nancy would be someone that she could rely on.
But it's important to know, and there are professional fiduciaries. So there
Yeah.
are companies and individuals that for a fee will serve in that role.
Right. And the last thing I wanted to, we got just a few minutes left. I know there are a couple of us that have businesses here. And you brought up something with me that I never even thought of. And that was, what do I want to happen to my business when I pass away? And that was something I never thought of that.
Well, if you're like me, and you are in the sense that I put my heart and soul in this business.
Mhm.
You know, I hope it continues. Or at least it should have a chance to continue. And if I don't address it in my estate plan, it doesn't have any chance at all to continue.
Mhm.
It just goes by the wayside. And so addressing business interests, or if you're in a partnership, or if you have some sort of an LLC and you have a business and you have maybe some inventory, or you have clients and a client list, something has to happen with those.
Mhm.
If you've got a bricks and mortar store, now you've maybe got real estate or a lease that you've got to figure out, what do we do with that?
Well, even if you just have, you just have an email list, and I
That's an
personally,
asset.
that's an asset. And you want them to get notified. You know, you want them to, whether your business is going to continue on after you're gone or not. You don't want to just, drift away. But it was something that I had not thought about. And so by going through this process, that intention document, like you mentioned, I loved that phrase. It really put me in the frame of mind of saying, I'm going to be intentional about this. I'm going to find someone who will agree to carry on for me. And, I will put down in paper, just a short list of, here's what I want to happen with my people when the inevitable happens. Right.
And the big picture is planning isn't as bad as it seems. It's a lot like you get in your car, you put on a seatbelt. You're not going to go out and run into a tree just because you put on a seatbelt.
Okay.
You have car insurance. You're not going to intentionally T-bone somebody just because you have car insurance.
Good point.
This is just a different kind of insurance, right? And I don't know, maybe
Those
it's
are
an
great
emotional
analogies.
It's really
Good
good.
analogies, Rebecca.
We're going to call it emotional peace of mind insurance.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, when Barbara was still here, when she was asking about her is it brother-in-law?
Mhm.
yes.
I was gonna say that what I would do is would let him know that without a will, without putting his paperwork in place, all the hard work he's put into whatever he owns, businesses, all assets, all the everything he owns, it means it's all for nothing. It means that he's literally saying, at least in the state of Massachusetts, that I am giving this to the state of Massachusetts to decide what they want to do with it. And they will go ahead and do that for you. But also, you're going to have very, very high fees. Like Rebecca was saying, in fact, I was surprised in Massachusetts, it's not going to be 3,000 to 5,000. I've had friends who have paid tens of thousands, to get just to get access to their parents' stuff. Their parents, these are children of the deceased. And so it becomes very expensive. And it's like, all for what? Like, you have family, you have friends. Wouldn't you rather see your hard work at least either carried on, or whatever you gained, your gains go to people you actually want them to go to, rather than have this state either? In fact, Massachusetts, they can't even take your property. So it's very, very, I don't want to be mean, but it's really irresponsible.
Yeah.
And that's not
Well,
how
Robin,
you...
I can tell you do this for a living because that's very well said.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Well, any final questions for our AHA expert today?
So I was going to say, if you have questions, and you don't want to ask him in a group, Kelly, do you have my contact information? You
Yep,
can
I do. I'm going to put it right here.
just email us. And you can actually email attorney at, and it will get to us as well.
And I brought my copy of the book with me to do.
Oh, right.
So here's the thing. Remember, that book isn't legal.
I know.
It's like how to get your thoughts together.
But I can write my obituary in here for my son.
There you go. Well,
And-
at the end of the day, it's just taking care of yourself. Oh,
Yeah.
and I know, I'll throw out one fun fact. There is no such thing as reading of the will.
Really? We see it all the time in the movies and TV.
I know.
But
I feel
Hallmark
like I should
movies,
create a big event and like charge admission and do this for people. But
that's funny. They always do it in
really
Hallmark
funny.
movies.
so if you go to probate, you can go online and see everybody's will. It's public information. That's another reason people will do a trust.
Because
Well,
that's private.
If we pay you extra, can we come and hang out at your office and read our will? Have a party?
Absolutely.
Oh my God, that'd be funny.
That's funny.
We'll serve chips and dip and just do the whole 9 yards.
Really, that's fun. I appreciate all of you coming today. This one of the things that we do regularly in Athena Village. I would love for you to pop into the village. There have been a lot of changes. We have kind of gone through a little bit of city planning. We've reorganized our neighborhoods, and things are new and refreshed.